Okay, 30 more seconds and then we'll come back.
What do you like to do?
Oh my God.
Okay, inshallah, we are going to continue. Okay, I want to hear from you guys. So one from maybe the brothers, if I want to take the mic to them first, just so they can say
Sure.
just one thing from their.
Who wants to share what their card was and what their solution was? Anybody?
Sorry?
You want to share what the card said and what you,
Hello. Assalamu alaikum. So the question was, how do you recharge after a stressful day of parenting? And some of the answers we got was taking a nap, going for a walk, letting out all that stress. Unfortunately, video games was not part of our discussion. What else did we have? Eating a good meal. Yeah. Yeah, that's all for now.
I'll speak on you guys. Is your question and then answer?
Yeah, you answer because I choose this one.
Yeah, this was.
Wait, let me see. Okay, so did you experience a loss in identity when you became a mom? The answer was yes. Like, especially going from no kids to one kid, it's the biggest life change. And when you don't have people around you that are like going through the same thing as you, like let's say you're the first friend in your whole group to become a mom, then yeah, like you feel really different. You feel like you definitely have like a whole different identity now.
Maybe you. What are you guys doing? Okay. I'm not a mother yet. My background is from psychology, so I talked to Atanit, and so I was just listening to her. Okay, yeah.
Ours was a different question.
Yeah.
Is there room for pursuing your own dreams or self-expression in early motherhood? And we both felt that, yeah, there is a room. You don't have to give up your dreams just because you've become a parent. And of course, I felt that you do require family support, especially your spouse. I personally did that. I started a course in Islamic studies, but it was online while I had my first baby. So I felt that kind of helped me stay sane through motherhood.
Thank you guys for sharing. I think that was, yeah, that's essentially, I think, some of the same experiences that we've had as well. I'm surprised the guys didn't talk about video games. I thought video games would be a big one for de-stressing.
We did talk about it. None of us have any time.
Okay, to play video games. There you go. Alhamdulillah. Some of the online people are saying that parenting is a beautiful journey, but I miss that I have no clue how to raise my kids the only way I saw my parents doing it without having prior knowledge of the Quran as well. So there's I think 12 people online as well. So I'll share some of their reflections as we go along. Okay.
So before we begin, we want to talk about your intentions and goals. When it comes to intention, I could quote the hadith. Everyone's heard it. I'm going to leave that aside for a second. There's two intentions I want to cover. The first is, why did you have kids in the first place, right? And I'm not going to ask you to answer that right now. I mean, maybe you want to have a bunch of kids to fund an early retirement. I've talked to people, it doesn't work out that way, but they get very expensive. But really, you have to ask yourself, what do you want for your kids, right? What is your intention for your children? And everyone says the word success. Everyone wants their kids to be successful, right? But what does that mean in both the dunya and the akhirah, right? In the dunya, we tend to define it as a doctor, right? That's pretty much it. The success is academics and money, right? Prestige in your job, and that's it, right? And if that's our definition, then even if you don't say it to your child or if you don't say it to yourself, in the back of your mind, you may be conditioned to think, yeah, this is a successful child, this is not successful, right? And if you think that way, it's going to affect the way you treat your child, right? Because when they come home with a D in math, you're going to be pretty upset, right? And where does that come from, right? And the second point is the akhirah, right? When you see success as having a lot of Islamic knowledge or being a scholar or being, in the masjid and well known by people, is your intention really for them to get to paradise or for them to be known as good Muslims? There's a difference there, right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But your intention for being here, that's a question, why are you here? Are you here to maybe challenge some of your assumptions? I mean, I want to point out that we're not, experts, and no one's really an expert at parenting, right? Even people who have 12, 13 kids, every child is a different personality. There's no formula that you can say, you know what, I've memorized this, it works. Now we can build it and apply it to every child. It doesn't work that way, right? There's no specifics for, just do these things and everything works out fine. I'm sorry if you came here thinking they were, right? So some of the goals we're going to cover. First of all, understanding attachment and personality. Now, if some of you have been in psychology, you'll know what those terms mean. But if you haven't, hopefully we'll explain them and you can understand, maybe even in your own childhood, how that affected the way you grew up and how you can change that maybe or make it better, improve on it for your children. We're going to cover the importance of play. I don't know which culture everyone here is from, but in the culture I'm from, play is frowned upon. It's not a good thing. Children come to the masjid. The idea is shut up, sit down, be obedient. That's not really the prophetic tradition, right? Being aware of sources of conflict, trauma. Sometimes we get in situations with our children, we don't realize that certain things are causing us to just be at loggerheads. And it can continue with parents for years where they're just fighting their children and their relationship just breaks down to the point where when they're 18, 20, 22, and they need their parents, there's no relationship left to draw on, right? They can't go to them because of where they've ended up after years of conflict over sometimes small things that became big, right? And finally, how to impart good character to our children. Now, one final note about intention. Hopefully, you're here to learn for yourself. What ends up happening, both for myself and everyone else, whether you're listening to khutbah on Friday or you're taking a lecture series or whatever it is, whenever you hear a good point, you think, oh, I know somebody who's not doing that. Or God forbid, you hear something about parenting, my parents never did that. This is not about either becoming a victim or becoming a judge, right? We're all here to improve ourselves. So the goal is to look inwards to yourself, how you can improve, not how everyone else could, right? Jazakallah.
Okay, so just before we get to the common sources of conflict, there were people trickling in at the end. So just to orient you and just how things are set up, we have personality questionnaires on the floor. That is for later, inshallah, before the break. On the chairs, there are handouts. That handout is for you to take and just kind of follow along if you like, or just take it home with you as like a summary sheet. There's some pencils and pens if you want to take notes as well. And there's also name tags. I think some people figured out the name tag. So if you want to just put a name tag on yourself, just so your group can identify you, because there are some group-based activities as well. Okay, and one more thing before we start with common sources of conflict, just so I know the demographic that we're speaking to, just from a show of hands, who has kids who are 5 and under? Okay, we've got a 4-year-old as well. Okay, who has kids who are between the ages of 6 and 10? Okay, I also have a 9-year-old. We also have a 9-year-old. Okay, and then who has kids who are 11 till 15-ish? Okay, and then 16 plus. Okay, so I think that mid range. Yes, I think a lot of our talk is for like sort of the earlier years, but we will also touch on the teenage years as much as possible as well. Okay, so just some common sources of conflict. I think some of the cards that we were discussing earlier were about the challenges of parenting. So a lot of research shows that these, if we had to identify the most common sources of conflict, and I've included some of the Muslim ones or things that Muslim parents would deal with, I would have to say, especially within counseling, and I'm going to stand up because I do my workshop standing, not sitting down. Primarily, it tends to be around school stuff. So school curriculum, LGBTQ stuff. We will talk about LGBTQ and trans related things after the break. So it will get a little bit heavy. Interactions with the opposite gender, dating, drugs, all that kind of stuff. Mental illness seems to be a really big one now within the Muslim community. I actually just had a couple of people reaching out to me for like different really severe mental illnesses that their daughters or sons are experiencing, in which they had to get hospitalized as well. Gender roles and upbringing, so your own upbringing from like Pakistan or India or wherever the demographic is from, who's going to do the household chores, so all these things. And of course, the last one, I got this a lot too when I was doing therapy. I'm not a therapist, but I tried it for a little while. Just external factors that my daughter has evil eye or this jinn or things like that. Many times it wasn't the jinn. And Sister Thamia Zubair, my teacher here at Al Huda, she would always joke with us and say that the jinn are like, they're too busy for you to like, they have their own life. They're too busy to always come and attack you. Of course, the jinn, we believe in the jinn. They definitely have that power, but many times it's our fault. It's not, we can't blame everything on the shayateen and the jinn. Okay, so I'm going to start off with attachment. And if you do have a psychology background, some of these terms might be sort of familiar. I'm not going to go into all of the theory, but very quickly here. Attachment is an emotional bond that you have, you and your child. It could be with other people as well. We're talking about you and your child, especially in their early years. Their connection with you as a caregiver essentially becomes the blueprint for how they will relate to society, how they will relate to their religion, as well as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in general. Having a safe relationship with you as their parents gives them sort of the tools and just a way to learn how society works and to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for their needs and to come to you as well for safety. In terms of the 4 parenting styles, and I'll just kind of give you a hint here that there will be a few slides which we'll have a little quiz on. We'll have a couple of quizzes and we have a couple of prizes as well. So you might want to take notes or memorize some of the slides. Don't take pictures of the slides. It is being recorded, inshallah. So the 4 parenting styles, this is from research that's been done decades ago. There are, of course, other parenting styles that are more common or just sort of, you might see them on Instagram or just like on YouTube, gentle parenting and positive parenting, but it kind of all stems from these 4 broad categories. Number 1 is a permissive parenting. This is like the cool mom, the cool dad. You're super chill, but you are like overly chill. Like you just let your kids do anything. Ice cream at midnight, no breakfast, eat whatever you want for dinner. You don't know who their friends are. You don't care if they fail that math class that they got a D in. So it's just super permissive. So it's not just chill, but it's like you don't really know what's going on with your kids. And there's a lot of overindulgence and even spoiling of the kids. Second one is authoritative, which is sort of, I would say, like the healthiest parenting style, as the research shows, that you are solving problems alongside your children. So you're not spoiling them. You're also not being like a micromanager. You're not their boss. You're not their supervisor, but you're working alongside with them. There's open communication. There's natural consequences. It's not like a lot of punishment and go to your room and timeouts and things like that, but it's like a balance between the two. The third one, unfortunately, what I would see a lot, this is when people have to come for therapy, is neglect. So neglectful and abuse, I would put it together. We will talk about abuse in a few slides. I will give a trigger warning when that happens. But neglectful is that uninvolved, absent parent, again, does not know what's happening with the children, but more so doing it in a harmful way. So permissive is more like, you're just sort of like happy-go-lucky, no consequences. Neglectful is kind of from an evil, manipulative, harmful intent. It could also be because of a mental illness that makes the parent unfit to parent. And finally, we have authoritarian. This might seem familiar to most of us, perhaps, and I'll come to in a second. This is highly parent-driven, punishment-focused, like you have to become a doctor or engineer or else we'll lose honor in our family. You have to marry this person or I will do this and that. It's a one-way communication. The child's feelings, emotions are not really taken into place. Or I joke around, this is like my mom and me joke about this kind of stuff all the time. I was telling my mom that the first time I told her, I think I was 12, that my feelings are hurt. And these are, remember, immigrant parents. We came here in 96, right? So from Pakistan. It's difficult for them. They're surviving. Both my parents worked full time. And I just told her one day, my feelings are hurt. My mom's like, what's feelings? Get over it. Like, what do you mean feelings? I just came back from work. What feelings? And so it's such a difficult conversation to have when you're first starting to talk about mental health and mental illness. My mom is amazing, by the way, just letting you know, but just wanted to give that as an example. Okay, so again, back to you guys. We're going to discuss those 4 parenting styles. So number 1, just with the person next to you, or you could do it as a group activity. Which category do you think you fall into mostly? And be honest with yourself. It might be like a couple of them, and I'll go back to the slide as well. And then which one do you think your parents followed, even if they never said, oh, I'm permissive or I'm authoritarian, but which one do you think your parents demonstrated? And with that as a follow-up, if there is time, how would you describe your childhood? So how would you describe your childhood based on your parents' strategy? And then which one do you think you are right now? And no judgment, this is supposed to be a safe zone, so don't feel embarrassed or ashamed. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to discuss this.
You'll notice at the bottom, it's sort of like, yeah. And as they get more demanding, they're leaning towards the but if they're both responsive to it's but in other cases, he was a mother. So I guess I'd put it at the table with salt that guy is great. Yeah, it's just research shows that it's a little better. I won't be the parents. That's how we did with the others. It's not another monster. It means that as a child, let's say it could be a monster. Change your facing. As opposed to just like my dad was great and say, hey, this is happening. This is doing child based on the sort of like aging, okay, in what case do you think this could be? Let's say based off specific there's still kind of cultural changes. That's it. You don't ever like having a bad day. You're not gonna be like, okay, they were share. It's just not. Instead, it's then translate or get him to get involved in the decision. But his work choices this is a little different than just like we're doing this. You look at what's going on. Swans. But that's not the other. Yeah, it has changed. Yeah, sure. Yeah, he's always on. No, you can make the child was when there's multiple cases like, oh, look, I was authoritarian. I taught my kid was doing turned out fine. That's called anecdotal. You can say, sure, they turned out fine. But they've been hurt. You change their style a little bit. Also, right? Now they're used to listening to everything you say. But will they ever find a couple people they can make decisions? Oh, it's harder because you're used to all instruction. We tend to touch our kids. This. Whereas you can actually go, you know what? Work together. And then that technique as well. You become more, I mean, you got to guarantee your child and this has been shown to get to work that way. Or they're more likely to. I think you're mixing up playing with the child versus being authoritarian. So you can involve your child in decisions while still being decision maker.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are you saying that's better? Are you saying that's better?
We can discuss this. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it, inshallah. Okay, that was some really, really good discussion. Lots of different viewpoints. And I think that's the whole point of this kind of a workshop. So something that I'll just mention from the group in the back, because we do want to take sort of wisdom and expertise from the grandmothers in this room, inshallah. My mom is now also a grandmother as well. So I think the general sort of consensus was that sometimes we are authoritative, sometimes we are authoritarian, but I think the goal is to kind of stay in the authoritative category as much as possible. But of course, there will be some times where you will need to put your foot down. Again, the way that we do it doesn't have to be like as an authority figure. It could still be someone as a collaborator, someone that your kids look up to you. But the group at the back was saying that despite whichever style that they chose, and they did try and change from their parents' generation, which was even more different, like you do as I say, and that's it, there is no choice. They still felt, I think the Urdu term was, dil ko hum log fatah nahi kar sakte. Like we did not capture our kids' hearts, and that is heartbreaking. Like honestly, that's something that I would want for my kids as well. That you do everything right. They've maybe gone to med school. They've even studied the Quran. They've done everything, but they don't look up to you, or they don't respect you in that way, or they don't even like. They're just like, yeah, it's my mom. She's cool, but they don't look up to you. They don't ask you for advice. They don't really think you're cool in any way. They're just like, yeah, that's just my mom. That's just my dad. So that's a really important point about how do we capture the hearts of our kids? Forget this quadrant, forget this model. Capturing hearts is like, it's way beyond psychology or any research or any data. And I think if you want to share one of what the brothers was saying, one of his points, do you want to share? You're good? Okay. We'll leave it at that for now. Okay. I'm going to move forward, and we will have more time to talk about these, and we will stay at the end for more Q&A if there's more personal questions as well. Okay, so we talked about different parenting styles. The next thing is 4 different attachment patterns. And there's a lot of like 4s, and there's a lot of quadrants in psychology. So number 1 is secure. This, according to research, is sort of the best attachment pattern. You want to try and stay in this as much as possible. And people did mention, some of the sisters mentioned that sometimes they are permissive, sometimes they're authoritative. The research shows that the more stable you are in your parenting, so the more that you can kind of be in the same sort of pattern, it is better. But even for my parents, like they were very permissive in some things, but when it came to school, they were very authoritarian, right? So it really depends on the situation as well. So secure attachment, these are not styles, but these are the attachments that you have with your children. So secure is when your parents are predictable, they're nurturing and available. Children know that they are loved and they are being attuned to, they are being understood. So I would say like at least 75 to 80% of the time we should be. We should be aiming to be this type of parent. Not easy, especially with work and paying bills and just our own spirituality and everything else. Insecure ambivalent, the second one, is that as a parent, we are inconsistent and we are not as aware of our child's needs. And the child can therefore become clingy and they find it hard to become independent. So it kind of does the opposite. You're like, just get away from me. I have work or I have things to do, to go play with your friends. And in response, they become more clingy because they are actually looking for your attention. Third one is insecure avoidant. So I know they're a bit confusing. Ambivalent and then avoidant. Ambivalent is you're neither here, you're neither there or here. Avoidant is like pushing away, avoiding the feelings. The parents are not available. If they are available, their only connection is criticism. So they're always just correcting, don't do this, and beta, why'd you do this? And go pray and do this and do that. But there's no connection. It's just correction. And the child therefore learns to suppress their feelings and to avoid talking about feelings at all. And finally, again, this is more like I would say the abusive side of parenting, the trauma side, in which the parents are disorganized. These are kids who have experienced, unfortunately, early trauma. It could be emotional, sexual, physical abuse from a parent or from a mother or father role figure. And the child becomes completely unsure as to how they should respond to a trusting parent figure. So there's a lot of confusion because for a child, it's like, oh, my dad is a safe person. My mom is a safe person. And if that same mom and dad abuses them, it can completely crash that child's world. When I would see patients like this for therapy, this is probably, I think, one of the most difficult patients because they've grown up. Nobody in their family believed that they were abused, and now they're parents themselves, and they have become avoidant or insecure parents.
So now we come to a really tough question, right? What if your child is 12, 14, 16, and you haven't really built a connection with them, right? You've, for whatever reason, I mean, life gets busy. Maybe you were struggling between finding jobs or struggling with in-laws or, whatever the case may be, problems happen in life, right? And you don't get to tell those problems to go away while you raise your children, right? They happen at the same time. So if you can just go to the next slide for a second. There are techniques for raising children that are, again, none of them are specific, right? It's not like at 9 a.m. do the following, right? It's more, you need to be playful with young children. You need to be able to accept them for who they are. You need to be curious and empathetic. Now, all of those are pretty vague. We'll get into more detail, but we're talking about the what if scenario, right? What if your first 12 years of your child was on autopilot, right? You were giving them food, you were giving them what they needed, but you're just surviving, right? And may Allah make it easy, but that's a scenario for a lot of parents, right? Now, how do you fix that? There are things you can do, starting with some humility. You can apologize to your child. I was actually talking to a cousin of mine. She had lost a child at a very young age to cancer, and she had another child shortly afterwards. And she was completely permissive with that child for 15 years. It was whatever the child wanted. Psychologically, you can understand why, right? But that child was severely overweight and had other issues. And she actually told me, I sat down with them and I apologized. And I said, I'm really sorry. And I explained where I came from and why it happened. And he said, don't worry, Mom, I understand. And weirdly enough, from that moment on, he started working out losing weight. It's like something clicked where he realized what happened in his childhood and why it wasn't good for him, even though he got everything he wanted. Right. So it starts with a bit of humility on your part and apologizing. Again, not going to say it's going to fix everything instantly, right? Nothing is 100% it's going to work, right? But it doesn't hurt to say it, to say, hey, this is what happened and it was tough and I'm sorry if I did anything wrong. Family therapy is an excellent place to go as well, right? Again, it's not going to fix everything, but you can start getting to the root of the issue, talking to your child, open up that connection again. And the last two on this list, curiosity and empathy especially, are really important because now your child is someone that you're not connected to. You don't know who they are. You need to now take the time to find that out, right? What do they like? What do they want to do? You don't have to go and say, oh, you're going for basketball? I'm coming with. Forcing it is not going to fix it, right? Showing up to your child's basketball game with his friends is probably going to be the opposite, right? Forcing yourself into his life or her life is not going to help, right? It takes a bit of like, it's slow and it's a process, but it has been shown it can work. So if you're in that scenario, I do make dua, but these 4 points, this playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy are some guiding principles even for young children, right? You want to spend time playing with them and accept them, and it'll create a lot more of that connection as opposed to just, I've mapped out your life for you. Here you go.
Okay, I'm just gonna give a quick example before I get you guys to talk again, inshallah, about curiosity. This might seem like I don't know, it's not an intense example. And when I share it with my friends, they're like, what? That's kind of cool that your mom did that. I was in high school, not many Muslims in that high school. We moved to a different city. I had no friends there. I was like super, like, that depressed, emo, sad teenager. So I was in my angry phase, of course, as like, I don't know, 16-year-old. And everybody did weed. Everybody smoked and did weed and did drugs in school. Nothing like, and we homeschool our kids now, so you probably like, what? But at that time, I was in a normal public school. Some guy came and just put like a bag of weed under my locker, and then they had a dog sniffing around. It stopped at my locker. The police came. It was a whole situation. I did not get in trouble. The police believed me. I told you about that guy. I'm not gonna say his name. And the dog sniffed my locker, and I think some weed came on. He was trying to kick it under my locker, and so just to get me in trouble. The teachers believed me. I wore a hijab. They're like, "What is this girl gonna do?" But I went home. I told my mom because my mom had this policy. She's like, "Hey, like Kashmal, you gotta do open communication with me. Whatever happens at school, whatever happens with some guy saying something to you, just share it with me." So my mom is, Pakistani mom, making her rotis and getting dinner ready. And I'm just doing my homework and I'm like, oh, by the way, mom, this some guy just like pushed like a bag of weed under my locker and I got kind of like in trouble. And my mom stayed curious. Like I was so surprised that she didn't just start yelling at me and be like, okay, you're getting married now, we're going to Pakistan, and what are you doing? And she was like, she just kept making her roti. Surprising. I don't even know if my mom remembers this, but she remained curious. She was like, oh, okay, then what happened after that? Oh, what's weed? Like, what are these drugs? Like, what is that? Where's your locker? She just stayed curious and I didn't get in trouble because she trusted me. She knew I was not doing drugs and she knew I wasn't in any sort of legal trouble either. So that is staying curious to the maximum. Just even if something really horrible happens with your kids, you're not like going insane, but you are remaining curious, you're remaining empathetic as well. And then one thing I want to say that was about attachment and just authoritarian. Again, some of the people were mentioning in the audience that, like, our parents were authoritarian, fine, but we turn out okay. We're fine. Maybe our hearts are not as connected. But interestingly, when again, I'm giving a lot of examples from my parents because they know I do this stuff. My parents are like in-laws. So many of them have now learned that authoritative and being more nurturing does have its benefits. And my dad and my mom were like, we never said I love you to you, but they will say I love you to my kids. And they're like, this is the first time we've ever said honey or dear or I love you. And it's to my kids. I'm like, great, you guys never said it to me, but you're saying it to my 9-year-old. So they even understand that it is actually really important to have that nurturing connection. You want anything else? You good? Okay. So we're going to give the mic back to you guys.
Yeah, sorry. The topic is a little, what does my child need from me to feel secure attachment? You may feel like, what does that even mean, right? We talked about things about attachment. Think back to your childhood and when you felt closest to your parents, right? Do you know what your kids need from you? Because every kid is a little different. I know my son just needs to play sports with me. Not like group sports. He doesn't like them. It's usually individual who play with me or just fight. My daughter just wants to tell stories. She's 4, but I noticed that helps them feel secure when they do that with me, right? Or it could be things that you don't do. For example, I cannot get angry because then my kids feel like they're very distant from me. And that's not true for all kids. Some kids don't care, right? You can yell till you're blue in the face and they're fine with it. Not saying that's healthy, but so think of those things and discuss amongst yourself, what does your child need from you, right?
Might be a little bit harder.
Feel free to turn around, make groups, talk to the people around you.
Okay, we're going to resume, inshallah. Again, lots of great discussion. I'll just answer a couple of questions as they are coming up because I think a lot of you are here to get some specific questions answered. One question was about differentiation and fusion. These are, again, psychological terms that we haven't talked about. There's no slide on it. I always have it, but I just forgot today. So it's when your kids are younger, they, of course, want you, especially like the moms, like you're feeding them and like other individuals are changing their diapers, like they need you for everything. And that is called being fused. That is completely normal. A secure attachment is a child who is fused to you. They see a stranger, they get stranger danger, completely normal. As they get into middle childhood, so like, for example, like my son now, he is 9, there has to be that moving away from fusion to interdependence. So a little bit of differentiation. You don't need to feed a 9-year-old. They can shower themselves. They can like do all these things themselves. I think the problem happens is that when we, especially as moms, I don't want to speak for the dads, but I'll just at least say it from a mom to mom perspective, as our kids get older, and I think some cultures also, there is some cultural pressure that no, you just like, he's my baby. Like they're always your babies and you don't let them do things on their own. And the research shows and the clinical evidence and also just like life experience from talking just with my mom and just other aunties within my family as well, is that if you do allow interdependence, a little bit of differentiation to happen in just everyday tasks as well as their identity, it is actually better for their mental health. So sometimes we will overly spoil our kids. Again, I'm talking from a counseling perspective. A lot of wives would come to me and say, my husband cannot even boil an egg or cannot even like warm his own chai or like does not know how a kettle works or doesn't know how to turn a dishwasher on. And you're like, okay, what did like, I wonder how your mother-in-law is. And the moms are like, yep, we never taught our sons anything. He's my baby until the age of 35. And it's like, oh my God, that is not normal. And then that can get really like weird and messed up as well. We had clients in which a 30-year-old son would still sleep in his parents' room. That is not right. That is complete fusion. So the fusion has to stop. So I'm like so scared of that my son does his own laundry. He's 9 years old. He does his own laundry. He folds his own clothes. He knows how to load the dishwasher. I'm like, you know what? Your wife will make dua for me. She'll be happy with me that you know how he can make his own breakfast. He can make his own lunch as well. So this is like, there's nothing wrong with teaching our kids how to be independent. I think we get scared that once they don't need us, then they won't need us, but they still need you for other things. You don't have to do their laundry for them. They can do their own laundry and they can still love you as well. As they get older, some of their moms are mentioning at the teenage years, then they completely don't want you. And that's true. That will also happen, completely normal. That is a differentiation phase. You kind of need to let them go a little bit. Basically, you have to be the psychological term is safe base. They go to school, they go hang out with their friends, they go to the movies, they go wherever, but you are their safe base. They can still come back to you, even if they have drugs being shoved under their locker, they can still come back to you. So differentiation has to happen. So don't be scared of it. I think from a cultural perspective, we're just like, no, just stay close to me. Like, don't become your own person. Of course, if it's too much differentiation, like in some cultures, you are expected to move out when you are 18 years old. We don't need that. I think Islamically, there's nothing like your kids can stay with you. But I think as a Muslim community, we can say things like my dad, he did that with my brother just to teach him finances. Like, hey, you're going to start paying me rent, or you're going to start paying your own phone bill, or you're going to pay for the groceries. That's okay. That is actually good differentiation that you are learning to be differentiated from your parents' identity. That was the first question. Second one is around boredom and creativity and structure time. So this idea of secure attachment, a lot of the moms were saying, maybe the dads also feel the same way, that nowadays it feels like for a child to feel secure and loved, they have to be in taekwondo classes, they have to be in swimming classes, they have to go to Kumon, and they have after school things, and they have so many things that we have to put them in so they're not bored, they feel loved, they feel secure, they need their own phones. The research shows this is not necessary at all. Structured time actually is not good for children in that way. They get enough structured time at school. Unstructured time is actually much better for anxiety, for mental health, for neurological development as well. And boredom, of course, the research is clear as day. It does induce creativity as well. So as a mom, as a grandmother, you don't need to like entertain your children. So authoritative parenting is that you have boundaries, absolutely, but you're not an entertainer. You are their parent. They can entertain themselves, putting them in a few programs here and there, playing with them. But if they are bored, they can load the dishwasher. That's what I always tell my son. I'm like, hey, you're bored, you can load the dishwasher. There's laundry. You can help your dad mow the lawn outside. There's lots of things to do that are not like, I have to go to this particular class. Do you want to add anything to that?
The brothers had, they didn't go in that direction. They made some good points about sometimes the child just needs to know that you're not going to get angry at them. That helps with that secure attachment. Sometimes they even push buttons just to see whether you're going to get angry at them, especially as they get older, right? And staying calm is an important key. Another brother brought up the point that it shouldn't just be don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, because you're basically creating an atmosphere where you're just setting rules and nothing else. And you figure, well, whatever's left is the right stuff, they can do that, right? And instead, it should be more of like, hey, let's do this together. Let's do this instead, right? It's a little more encouraging and positive as opposed to just a set of rules. And then, of course, we jumped ahead to personality and a bunch of other things that we're going to get to. So I don't want to touch on that yet.
Okay, we're going to move on. We have about 12 slides to cover before the break, inshallah, at 12, where we can all get some caffeine and chai into us, and then we will continue after that. So we'll try and go through this a little bit quickly. So why is self-awareness important? We touched upon it a little bit already, but number one, it affects the way that you cope, and it also affects the frequency and level of burnout that we experience. So one tool that we have from research, and you can use this in any part of your life, is called reflexivity, which is critical reflection. This is a very like researchy kind of definition, but just to summarize it, it's consciously reflecting on yourself. And I think everyone is doing that today. I'm doing that today as well. The grandmothers at the back are totally doing that. Like, oh, this is how my mom did it. This is how we're doing it with our grandkids. So you are questioning your identity, your assumptions, your biases, and something our parents maybe did not do before us. And this is something new for all of us as well. And this shapes our parenting choices as well. With regards to self-awareness, the first thing I would say, and I think the only thing that we have time to cover today, is personality. Of course, if you go for therapy, I highly recommend family therapy. It is like I did like a little bit of family therapy with a family, and I took like a third-year course on it. It's amazing. Like it's so effective. Even if like your whole like khandan, your whole family can't make it, if it's just a mom and dad and one sibling, or maybe like the mother-in-law shows up and a grandparent shows up, it's still super effective because the premise is that a family is like a system. So if you think of like gears moving, if one gear changes or shifts, the whole system can change. So it's very powerful, very effective. So that's number one. But if you don't want to pay for therapy and don't want to go for therapy, you can work on your own personality. We see from a meta-analysis of behavior genetics that personality is highly heritable. So there is almost like a 40 to 60% chance that your children will have a similar personality to you. That does not mean that if you have a personality disorder or you have narcissism or bipolar, different types of issues within your family, that your kids will inherit it. But if you do, you can come talk to me later. Therapy can help with that. There's also psychotropic medication that can help with personality disorders. They are very difficult to change. So I always make dua for individuals who are struggling with a personality disorder, depression, mania, all of that stuff, but it can affect your personality and parenting style. So at least the first thing we can do is being aware of our own personality, just so we know that this is how our kids will react. Okay, so who has heard of this personality test, Ocean? Any psychology students? Have you heard of Ocean? Okay, so I know there's other personality tests as well out there. This is the one that is, I would say, the most empirically validated. It has issues as well from a research perspective, but it's a good starting point. Okay, so OCEAN stands for openness to experience, which is basically how imaginative you are. Do you like learning new things, meeting new people? The C is for conscientiousness, not consciousness, but conscientiousness, which is how reliable are you? How organized are you? The E is for extroversion/introversion. Do you lose energy by being with other people, or do you gain energy by being with other people? I always say my mother-in-law is like, I think 100% like on the extroversion scale. She loves being with people, talking to people. I am interestingly an introvert. I actually would rather just go home right now and have a coffee and read a book and not be here, but just you can train yourself to be more or less. This is the best thing about personality as well. A is for agreeableness, how friendly and cooperative are you with other people? And N is the trickiest one, is neuroticism. I know people say like, oh, you're so neurotic, like a swear word. It's not a swear word, but it just basically means how stable are you emotionally. Some people are like super cranky in the morning. They're not morning people. As the day progresses, their mood gets better. And at nighttime, again, they get super tired and they crash. So that means they are high on neuroticism. People who are generally stable, like throughout the day, like normal mood, are low in neuroticism. So 2 points about personality. Number one is from an Islamic perspective, all personalities are fine, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us different for different reasons. So there's no judgment on any of these, and these are value free. And secondly, we will do the personality scale in a few slides, inshallah, is that these are from 0 to 100. So it's not yes and no questions. You're basically like, I know because for a therapy class, we had to do this. So openness to experience, I think I'm like 75% on that. Conscientiousness, I'm like 95% on that because I like things clean and I need to have like a schedule for everything. I'm like a 60-40 on extroversion, introversion. I'm, I think, like a 90 on agreeableness because I really don't like having fights with people. So you just know what you are, and it's just for your own knowledge, just so you know how you are going to interact with others. So especially when I became a mom, I knew that I am really high on conscientiousness, but when you have 2 kids at home, the house never stays clean, and that would get me really triggered. But I knew, okay, this is my personality. What can I do to manage this? So I basically taught my kids how to clean like really well, but also like I was okay with the house being a mess. And I knew that when things are messy, I would just tell my son and my daughter that, hey, like, no, mama just likes her room clean. So I would just say, okay, that was my boundary. Just keep my room clean and the kitchen clean. Everything else is fine. You can make a mess, destroy the house. I'm okay. Just like don't touch my bed and like don't touch the kitchen. So you can set boundaries based on your personality as a parent as well. Okay, any questions so far about the OCEAN acronym, the personality scale, how personality is inherited, the genetic component? Is anyone scared about that genetic fact that your kids' personalities will be a lot like yours or your grandparents' personalities? So some people were, when I said that, they were like, oh no, like I suck, like I'm a really bad person. So don't be scared. It can change, inshallah. Okay, I'm gonna skip the assessment just for a second and go to the next slide, but
No, are we going to do the
we're
assessment?
gonna do this, let me just, I think, right
Okay, I'll
before the
explain
break.
how to
Yeah.
do it, but
Yeah.
just, no, go ahead.
You good? Okay. It's fine. Okay, inshallah. A couple of points here about self-awareness and personality and parental burnout. I know a lot of the moms talk to me about having mommy burnout. We even have a book over here. You can look at the books later in the break as well. So parental burnout has 3 dimensions: emotional and physical exhaustion, emotional distancing, which is like withdrawal from your kids, and reduced parental self-efficacy. So just to put this in plain terms, you're completely just like busted, like you're done, you're tired. I think I experience more, I think I get withdrawn from my kids. Like personally, I'm just like, can you just like leave me alone? Like I just want some time to just like watch my YouTube videos. And also self-efficacy, your productivity as a parent. You don't feel like cooking dinner, you don't feel like going to work, you don't want to join another Zoom meeting. So that also reduces as well. So I want to ask you guys, just with a show of hands, who has experienced emotional withdrawal or distancing from their kids as a form of burnout? Just show of hands, and like no judgment here. Okay, who has experienced physical tiredness or exhaustion from after becoming a parent? Okay, like your legs and back and everything starts hurting after you become a mom. Okay, good. So it is a normal, common thing. And it's characterized usually by excessive presence and investment, high ambitions, and heightened demands. And it's interesting, the parents who score really high in the ocean scale on perfectionism and neuroticism and also conscientiousness, they are also the most at risk for developing burnout because you want everything perfect. You want your kids to look perfect. You want the house to be perfect. You want your work to be perfect. You want them praying 5 times and memorizing the Quran. So you want so many things, a lot of expectations on yourself and even society sometimes. And that is a higher risk factor for burnout. Right before the break, I'll just.
Okay. So some of the brothers brought this up as well, right? Everything we've talked about so far almost paints a picture of like this is ideal parenting, but it's never really like that, right? And the brother pointed out, sometimes the kids just push buttons, whether intentionally or not. right? Or sometimes life gets in the way, right? Maybe you have trouble at your with your boss at work, or maybe, a client or whatever the case may be. You're stressed out, right? So how do you handle those scenarios? We talked about it earlier with connection. It's the same sort of thing. Humility has to play a part in this. You have to be able to tell your kids, especially when they're old enough to understand what the word sorry means, that you're sorry, right? Like I've told my 4-year-old that I'm sorry and she forgave me. Now, I didn't do anything that bad, right? I got a little upset with her and she did something wrong, but it hurt her so much more that I got upset than the things she did, right? So I went overboard and I went too far and I told her that I apologized and she said it's okay, right? Told me to try harder next time, which I've told her before. So again, they copy your behavior, right? But um, being able to apologize and not expecting your children to be perfect, but also not expecting yourself to be perfect. Because what happens when we start talking about things like this is you paint a picture of like, I will be calm all the time. We talked about that, right? Being calm is important. It's also difficult, right? So just some things to keep in mind that how we cope with those stressors and put on you.
So I have a few pictures here of just, I think, the common ways of coping with stressors. Sometimes it could just be food, right? Emotional eating is a really big one for parents. Withdrawal, just being on our phones, Instagram, whatever social media that we have, just scrolling the phone just to like not think about parenting our kids. Again, no judgment, and this is completely normal. Just normalizing parental burnout here without feeling stigma or shame. In terms of how we sort of create these schemas through attachment, schema again is a psychological term. It comes from cognitive psychology. The way that we cope and the ways in which we burn out also kind of relates to our children and how they will become parents as well. I know when you have like a 2-year-old, it's hard to imagine her being like a mom, but try and think a little bit out into the future as well. So just asking ourselves the messages that our kids are hearing from us. So when I am with my spouse or when I'm with like my in-laws, what do my kids hear from us? What are we always talking about? Are we talking about finances and bills? Are we backbiting other people? Are we talking about religious things? Again, no like shame or judgment, just being honest and just think about your everyday conversations with your husband or wife or other family members. I think I don't know, just what do we always like? I think we're talking a lot about like my PhD. That was like for 8 years. That was like a lot of, yeah.
The brothers did touch on this as well, and it's an important point. How you behave and what you do sets the example for your kids, right? But even your own experiences. Like my dad was always against starting a business. Never understood why. His father owned a business, lost his business, and had a heart attack the moment he walked out of the building to declare bankruptcy for that business, not related, whatever the case may be. It was his time. But you can see how that would inform his idea of like, business is too dangerous, don't do it, right? Just get a good stable job. And so a lot of the things that, it creates this schema, right? We see life a certain way and we talk about it a certain way, and your kids are going to pick up on that, right? And I'm not saying one's good or bad, or you can't have your kids should all be entrepreneurs. No, right? Every kid is different. But understanding what you talk about a lot, what you discuss, is going to affect your children a lot, right?
And finally, here, just our overall predisposition and outlook on life. Personality also plays in a component on how you view life generally. Are you a positive person? Are you a negative person? You guys might have heard the terms optimism, pessimism, seeing the glass half full, all of that stuff. So do we talk negatively about the future, about the world in front of our kids? Even how are we talking about Palestine, for example, right? What's happening over there in Gaza? So our kids are listening. So being mindful of our outlook to life, and that will also impact their personality development as they get into middle childhood and early adolescence as well. And I think my personality professor said the latest research on personality, like I know it was even more scary. The stats was like 7 to 80% of your personality is inherited through your parents, and basically by like the age of like 16, maybe 18, your personality is pretty much like cemented. So it's a bit of a scary statistic.
One other example, just because it just came to mind as I was reading this. I was in England recently for a wedding, and one of my distant cousins, his son, came up to me and the rest of the cousins and was telling the story about his vacation. I won't mock the accent, but it was so negative. Everything was bad. The breakfast was bad. Everything. He went on for about 2 minutes, and one of my other cousins, who knew his father pretty well, said, "Yeah, yeah, but what do you think? Don't tell me what your dad thinks. And the kid stopped. And to his credit, he actually thought about it for a second. He goes, actually, I really like the omelets. So he was just repeating everything his father had said, right? And all his father had said was negative stuff about the vacation. I mean, I'm sure his dad probably paid for it and felt he didn't get enough value out of it. But the kid was quite happy with the omelets, right? When he had an opinion of his own. So if you're negative all the time, your kids are going to think, okay, this is normal to complain about everything, right?
Okay, so we have a quick little quiz, and it's just whoever puts their hand up first, they get the prize. What are the 4 types of attachment styles? You can look at your notes and then just tell me the 4 types of attachment styles. They don't have to be in order. And whoever puts up their hand first and you get it right, yes, the brother in the front. I saw you first. Okay, fine. I'll give you that. Yes, it starts with secure. Not insecure, you're close. Oh, so sorry. Okay. Disorganized. Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, good. Mashallah. Okay, you get a prize. This you can give them the Khalil Center and the 2 pens, one or the journal. Sorry, the journal is a little bit flowery, but you can give it to your wife. You can use it yourself too, yeah. Okay, mashallah. Jazakallah khair for interacting with that quiz. Okay, we're gonna go on to a slightly heavier topic, and then we will take a break after this, inshallah. This is about abuse and self-harm.
A quick preamble on this. We're not talking about this because you can take some specific lessons out of it. It's more things to watch for. We make dua that no child ever has to go through any of this. But this can derail a childhood, right? Especially like we're not talking like the one time a parent may tap a child in disapproval. Or like a brother brought up, 50 years ago, corporal punishment was a common thing in schools. I'm totally against it, and so was research. But again, if it's normalized back then, we're not comparing to them. We're looking at what's happening now in the way children are raised now. And if children are abused, it can mess up their childhood. It messes up their confidence, their self-esteem. You'll see their grades start to slip. But I also want to point out that while we're telling you this so that you can be vigilant, we don't want you to go so far so that the moment a child is crying, you whip around and go, are you being abused? Like it gets really, like some parents get, maybe triggered from their own past, but they can get very weird about it. And we want to make sure you don't go that far either, right? But again, even within your extended families, maybe watch for some of these signs and talk to their parents if you feel like, or if you need to talk to somebody else and say, I saw this, should I be concerned? Right? There are experts in the field. Maybe you need to talk to the imam, talk to somebody and say, is this something I need to concerned or am I going too far? Right? That's just my quick preamble on this so we don't all become a little strange whenever we're around kids.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the ACE definition, so trauma and abusive events. This is something that we use in counseling and psychology a lot. So if a child ever comes to us for psychotherapy, and the concern is around trauma, we will do the ACE test, which is basically looking at how many traumatic or abusive events or incidences have happened in their life. There's lots of research on this. Essentially, there shouldn't be for each age group, there shouldn't be more than like a certain number of incidences that have happened. And this includes emotional, physical, sexual, financial, cognitive, and even just neglect. So neglect is not abuse. Abuse is like going above and beyond in terms of the harm you are causing your child. Neglect is more so like you slept in and you forgot to give them breakfast, but that's happening like every few days type of thing. Your child is crying in the kitchen and they're hungry and you're just not able to. And again, over here, I also empathize with the parents as well of these children because sometimes they don't have much social support or support from their parents or their spouse or their in-laws, or they may have been abused as a child as well. So there's a big correlation with that as well. So just a few quick definitions. Physical abuse is hitting, yelling. Again, we mentioned like a tap on like the back or just like, kind of holding them a little bit hard because they were like hitting another child. That's not physical abuse. And you know what abuse is if you see it or if you experience it. It is something that is not, I would say, I think Sir Tamia, my teacher at Huda would say, it's not ma'ruf, it's not recognized. It's something that is like, it's not recognized as a form of good parenting. Sexual abuse could also include sexual play, for example, between like cousins or friends, exposure to pornography, whether it's intentional or accidental, that could also come under sexual abuse. Maybe an older cousin or a friend opened up a website and your child saw it, for example. Emotional abuse, this is, I would say, the most difficult to diagnose and to also see. It's things like constant criticism, humiliating your child, name calling, shaming, blaming, sarcasm that is like way beyond like normal sarcasm. And we see from the research that emotional abuse is sort of the core component that underlies physical, sexual, cognitive, and other types of abuses as well. And this actually tends to have the greatest negative outcome. Sometimes I think our focus a lot is like on sexual abuse, but I would say emotional abuse, difficult to recognize, difficult to treat, and it has the most long-term consequences as well. And I'm more, I think, passionate about this is because when I started doing counseling and therapy, and I saw my clients here at Al Huda, so the Muslims that I was seeing were like, Quran and Sunnah Muslims, like nothing out of the ordinary. And just the amount of abuse cases that I would see, I would just like come home crying. I'm like, what is happening with our Muslim parents and Muslim families? Like, why is there so much? And to be totally explicit, a lot of it was sexual abuse. I'm just gonna say it. Okay, so like someone did something, a chacha, chachi, mamu, dad, cousin. And I was like, okay, this is intense. This is like before I had kids. I was just recently married. So I was very like, oh my goodness. But I did switch to research because of that, because I was like, I cannot deal with the number of sexual abuse cases that are happening in the Muslim community. That's why I think I just want to just kind of, as a preamble that Irfan mentioned as well, that we want to just point it out to you guys. Okay, in terms of signs to watch out for, there's a whole bunch of signs. These are not clinical per se. The clinical examination is different. And of course, you see the child's body language, all of that. This is just for like, if you're just in the community, you're at the masjid, you're at an extended family's house. If you see any of these signs that are happening consistently without any cause, then there might be some abuse, something happening in that child's life. Just because a child is socially withdrawn or quiet, or they might skip classes for like a semester, or maybe they're having like headaches and they keep feeling like they have a tummy ache. This doesn't mean abuse at all. So don't take these out of context. It's a lot of these types of things. There's no cause, and the child also is not talking or engaging about it. If you ask them, they just say, no, everything's fine, or they don't say anything to you. So just a few examples over here: changes in sleep routine, appetite. In psychotherapy, we always look at sleeping and eating. If your sleeping and eating changes big time, either you're not sleeping enough or sleeping too much, not eating enough or eating too much. This is like a symptom for depression, anxiety. There's so many clinical conditions that eating and sleeping are related to. Although it's a very physical thing, but it affects your mental health as well. Okay, just before we move on to conflict resolution, any like questions? And I forgot to say a trigger warning. If you needed to step out, please step out during that abuse conversation. But any questions or like concerns right now? Any reflections around trauma and abuse in parenting? We're good. Yes, go ahead. Yep. Yeah. Yes, for sure. So that's a really good question. The brother is asking that none of these, like all of these signs, it's not that one of them would just like directly be correlated with abuse. The research shows that if it's several of these types of symptoms, number one, so several of them that are happening and they're happening consistently. So a lot of clinical diagnoses are 2 weeks, every single day, you notice the same behavior, 2 or more weeks. That's your sign as well. And third, something that is out of the ordinary. So your child has never behaved like this before, but all of a sudden they're behaving like this. So for example, a very common sign that I would see in patients was a child is completely okay with going to a certain person's house, very friendly, very happy. And then all of a sudden they're like, I don't want that man near me. I don't want that uncle. I don't want that mamu. I don't want like, they just start crying thinking about that person. That would be something to be watchful for. But just like, if it's just like a random day and they're just like, oh, mama, I miss you, I don't want to go there, no big deal. If it's a huge change from their normal, predictable behavior, that's number one. Secondly, consistency. And third is a lot of these symptoms then is related to abuse. Yes. Raj, you want to add anything? Okay, we want to conflict resolution, inshallah.
Go to the next slide. Sorry. All right. Empathy, validation, safe space, and a non-judgmental attitude. All words that sound really flowery to a lot of people. You grow up hearing these words and it sounds like you're just being very permissive and letting kids do what they want. To clarify, that's not what this is about, right? All of these words don't mean that kids have free reign to do whatever. I know it's sometimes portrayed as that because people go too far with their permissiveness, but I'll give some examples. The word empathy, for example, refers to being able to understand the emotions someone's experiencing without having to go through the same experience, right? And empathy is one of the great qualities of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so when it comes to kids, let's say, I'll give you an example. Your child doesn't want to go to the dawat that you're all going to because there's no other kids for him to play there. So he throws a bit of a tantrum and says, I don't want to go. It's not fun. You could respond with, you're going, and I don't want to hear that attitude. Okay, that works. You're the parent, you set the rules. I can understand you don't really want to go, right? But we have to because of whatever the reason may be. They're a close family friend, they'll be offended, or that guy will be there, you can play with him. Is there anything we can do that this will be more fun for you? Or maybe we can do this later. It's basically the same thing. He's going, whether he wants to or not, right? And I've had this conversation with my son. But I'm making it like, you know what? I can understand you don't want to go. It's an acceptable feeling. It comes because you're a bit of an introvert, like your dad. You don't want to go. I can understand that. But it's happening. So now work with me. How can we make this less of an attitude problem? Right? So I started off by saying, I can understand that. I understand that feeling, right? And empathy and validation, there's some overlap, right? Like when you validate someone's feelings, I can understand you're angry. I can see that you're angry. I see that bothers you, right? You start off by acknowledging that they're allowed to have feelings. And it's almost like maybe you're hearing this and you're thinking, that's silly. Everyone's allowed to have feelings. You say that, but the way we tend to parent, or the way maybe we've been parented, is you have to toe the line. Your child comes home, maybe they're 14 now, right? They have a lot of that teenage angst. They take their backpack off, they throw it on the ground. You whip around. You're ready. Excuse me? Pick that up right now. That's not really a safe space anymore, right? Because your child can't express themselves. Now you turn around and you say, what's wrong? You talk it over. You teach them that they're not supposed to respond that way. But if your first reaction is, do exactly what I say right now, you're going to get the same end result. In front of you, they will behave. But they haven't really learned to process that emotion. They're repressing it, right? They've realized that, you know what? This person that I live with is not really comfortable to be around. They're going to yell at me, they're going to bark at me, they're going to scream at me. So when I'm around them now, I'm going to hold my personality back a little bit. And maybe that's great for you. It's not good for them, right? Now, this safe space, I know the word is used a lot with the LGBT. We're not talking about that, right? That safe space is a place where your child can be themselves and you can help them be a better version of themselves. Again, I'm not saying that whatever they are, you accept them, let them do what they want. Oh, they throw tantrums? Let them throw tantrums. No, if your 14-year-old is throwing tantrums, we need to work on this, right? But there's a way of working on it. Beating them into submission is not that way. Talking to the father. Sorry, you got a question? Okay. So the brother asked a question about the child has a repeated behavior, right? This falls into a case of discipline if you want to talk to it, but you can escalate. For example, my son had a certain behavior that really bothered me. I won't go into it. I maybe overreact, but I had to set, like, this was happening over and over again. And first we joked about it, then I got serious about it. I tried yelling because I know it's wrong, but I did it anyway. It didn't work either, right? So we had to put like, hey, if you do this, there are going to be consequences now, right? And it tended to work. I can't guarantee it'll work, but you're right. You do have to escalate, right? There's an entire booklet dedicated to teachers on behaviors in the classroom. It's much harder if you're dealing with 36 kids that you don't raise as your own and you have to deal with their behaviors. But there's an entire set of things you can do in terms of escalating, within the classroom, how to talk to them. But you're right, that does become an issue. And I don't know if we have a slide on that specifically. With the Q&A, we can talk on it more, but it is an important point. Jazakallah. The role of fathers. Now, I don't want to get sexist here. Sorry, we're trying to leave the questions for afterwards. Sorry about that. The role of fathers as a positive role model. I know in this society, there's this whole gender confusion thing going on. We're going to touch on that later on. Fathers have a different role, okay? And children have a different relationship with their father. And that father has to be someone that the children can look to for not just that caregiving, but be the sort of that example, that role model. And we touched on it earlier. In our culture, at least my culture, anger was an immediate response, right? It's a great way to get immediate behavioral correction. Studies show long term it's not very healthy, right? But if you want a quick fix, sure, you're just kicking the can down the road and making it a problem for tomorrow or later on or 5 years from now when they have no relationship with you because you yelled at them more than you should have. And to go back to our prophetic tradition, right? Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, he lived with the Prophet for 10 years. And this is as a child. And he said, I never heard him say oof to me. Like it was never any disappointment. Now, this comes back to that attachment theory we talked about earlier, that differentiation, that fusion, how attached you are to your parent. Maybe as a parent, you just do that. And you think, what? I just shook my head and kissed my teeth. What? They did something wrong. But to the child, that can be devastating. And you don't realize it, right? Because to you, it's not that big of a deal. But they're so fused to you that to them, it is a big deal. And that's why you have to be careful with those things, right? Our Prophet Muhammad would never even ask, why did you do this? It's a common question. When kids do something wrong, we turn around and we ask them, why'd you do that? As if there's supposed to be some logical reasoner who will come up with a reason as to why they did it. Or if they don't have one, we'll say, oh, gee, you're right, Dad. That was illogical. I won't do that again. It's not going to end that way, right? You're just putting them in a position where they feel worse, they feel embarrassed, and you're not going to get the answer you want, right? Now, I'm not saying you don't correct the behavior, but you don't start off with, why did you do that, right? It ends with the point that I know it's tough, especially given how we grew up, but showing love and mercy will pay off more in the long run, especially because if you're not showing your child love, they're going to go looking for it somewhere else. And I don't mean that in a weird way. They're going to basically find friends who accept them for who they are. And they, God forbid, it's friends who do weird things, right? May Allah protect all our children. So again, to bring the point back, showing that mercy and compassion, right? We talked about, I know there was a bit of confusion I felt around the permissive parenting and authoritative and authoritarian. Letting your children do what they want is not what I'm suggesting, but you have to carve out time to actually play with them, right? Now, I know life is difficult, but the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to play with his grandson Hassan and Hussein so much that when he went down for sujood, in their eyes, he was ready for a horse ride. They would jump on his back. And he never yelled at them about it, right? Obviously, he just stayed in sujood for longer until they were done jumping on his back. But it paints a picture of someone who is very different from the way we see parenting. We don't really play around with our children enough, right? And there was a man who came to the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a Bedouin, and he said, I have 10 children, but I've never kissed any of them. And the Prophet replied, those who show mercy will not be shown mercy. And this is repeated in a different story where a man saw the Prophet Muhammad kissing a child, and he said, we don't kiss our children, almost as a boast. Like our kids are strong, right? We don't kiss our children. And the Prophet replied, how can I put mercy into a heart that Allah has taken it out from? And there's an important ending to that. The natural state for a parent is to have mercy towards their child. It's already there. If you don't have it, it's because it's been taken out through life experience or whatever it may be. So, the natural state of a parent towards a child is to be merciful and show love and be kind. Unfortunately, sometimes life gets difficult and stressful. And we tend to forget that, right? We don't tap into that mercy.
Just gonna say one last point, and then we'll do a case study, and then we will go for a break, inshallah. The example of the 4 lessons from counseling. This is like if you are ever interested in becoming a counselor or a psychotherapist, your first lesson is usually those 4 principles. So empathy, safe space, non-judgmental attitude, and validation. So these 4 things, you don't have to be a therapist. You can use them. Once I learned it, I was like, oh, I can use this in Quran class. I can use this with my parents. I can use it with my kids. It's very like easily applicable, these 4 principles. And from the prophetic example, I think the one of the best stories I think that demonstrates these 4 principles is a very I think popular, commonly known story where a young man came. I forget his name. I'm not sure if the name was mentioned in the narration, to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, "Ya Rasulullah, let me commit zina." So I think you guys all are familiar with this one. So it wasn't even like I think our modern day example, I think Sheikh Yasser Qadi mentioned in like a modern day example, it's not even like, let me just date. This was like, let me sleep with a person. And so imagine if like our kids came up to us and said that, not even let me marry this person, or I like this girl, I have a crush on her. Like, no, let me just sleep with this person. We would go absolutely insane. And the Prophet ﷺ, in that hadith, that narration, if you break it down, he shows empathy, he shows validation, he makes it a safe space. The other Sahabas are like, what are you saying to the Prophet? And the Prophet ﷺ is like, no, it's okay. He's a teenager, he's got hormones, let's deal with this. And he makes it a non-judgmental, he has a very non-judgmental attitude in the way the narrator is even saying that hadith. So if you ever get confused or you think like, man, these like, it's like a white person thing, like validation and empathy and safe space. It's not. Like, I know these terms didn't come up in the hadith, but if you analyze some of these narrations, you see these principles of counseling even from the Quran and the Sunnah.
Just a couple more points related to what we talked about earlier. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also pointed out that the strong one is the one who can control his anger, right? And I have to reiterate this again because we talk about strength and raising kids strong, and we tend to fall back on the idea that means we have to give them a hard life and make it hard for them and be tough on them. I'm not suggesting there are times you don't be tough, but there has to be moments filled with mercy and compassion, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with his example, created the best generation. And he didn't do it by being mean and rude and yelling at people and being a drill sergeant, right? He did it through his example and his mercy and his compassion. And from that, they wanted to be the best. They weren't pushed into being the best, right?
Okay, so I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes or so, and then we will discuss. So just with your group or the person next to you, whatever you like. This is just a review of everything that we've learned so far. Attachment styles, the principles of counseling, the prophetic example, and personality as well. So we have a case study. All names and ages have been changed. This is not like one of my clients or anything, but this is a common thing that happens in therapy. So Ali, who is 13 years old, comes to you one day after playing with his friends in the neighborhood. And he says, Mom or Dad, I didn't like the way that uncle talked to me and looked at me. Okay, some uncle, let's just say in the neighborhood. How would you use the 4 components of counseling as well as attachment styles? You can even bring in personality to just start the conversation with Ali. So Ali could be your nephew, could be your son, make it any relationship you like. And he comes up to you and says, I wasn't comfortable. That uncle was looking at me weird, or he talked to me weird. What would you do in this situation? So take 5 minutes and then we will discuss. Might have one. Okay, we will come back inshallah just in 2 minutes. If any, just one group and one spokesperson from that group, brothers or sisters, how would you deal with, not deal, how would you speak with Ali, or what would you say to him, not say to him from what we've learned so far? Yeah, I was gonna say you get a prize for this one, but you already got a prize. I'll go to the sister at the back. Yes, go ahead.
1 second.
Ali, you look sad. You look sad. It's okay to be sad. So, what I do with my kids, I always give them a touch so they feel secure. After that, I can say, like, would you like to discuss, like, why you're feeling sad? And sometimes what I do, like with my kids, like when I feel sad, I do these steps. For example, Ali, I will say, "Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim," because shaitan makes you sad, and just a little conversation with Ali, with all these shaitanic tactics to avoid those all shaitanic tactics, to read duas and everything. And in my heart, I will be reading Ayatul Kursi, so Ali would open up to me, and then sorry, yeah, being non-judgmental. So I will give my life experience. Okay, I once I was sad, so I did this, I did wudu, and I prayed namaz. Would you like to do that? And if Ali is comfortable with doing that, he might go doing that. And then when he calms down, comes out from that sadness, when I start feeling that Ali is coming down from that sadness, so then I will. Would you like to talk? Is it a good time to talk right now? Or you can take time, Ali, we can talk later on whenever you feel comfortable, but you are safe. The space, nobody will judge you, right? Anything else? Yeah, that's what I'll say. Yeah, I will wait for.
Okay, thank you. Especially when you said, and that was very like heartwarming. I'm like, oh, if I was Ali, I'd be happy with that response. Just one thing I will just correct on is we didn't mention the emotion here. So if the person is not mentioning the emotion, you can't label the emotion for them. It's something that I do all the time with my kids. Like, oh, you look sad, and my son is like, I'm not sad, I'm mad, and I'm just like, oh, you look mad, I'm not mad, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, oh my god. So you don't label the emotion, you let the child label the emotion. So you say, what are you feeling? Everything else was on point, alhamdulillah. Yeah, I think that was the only correction that I would make, but everything else was great. Jazakallah okay. And I would say there was a research study that said if you could say 3 words to your child, like for validation, empathy, it would be that was what you said. You are safe is amazing. Like you are safe is great, but research shows that I believe you is even stronger. I believe you. So even when my 4-year-old is having a tantrum about like I don't know, like her doll's arm broke, something happened, I just say, I believe you. And I'm like, I don't know, I don't really care about that doll, but I'm like, I believe you, that you are having a hard time. So I believe you, you are safe is great. I trust you. Yeah, my mom would do, I trust you a lot too. My mom would always do, I trust you. Yes, brother, one last. Yes. Yes.
So the brother pointed out that you don't just immediately say, well, it must be something you did, right? I don't know. It's common in some cultures that the child must be wrong, right? If something's wrong, well, what did you do? Uh, Even if you're asking it almost curiously, what did you do is like it's an accusatory question, right? What did you do wrong is what we're basically saying, right? Okay, we're going to fill out the, in front of you, there's going to be this personality test. Um, It is the ocean personality test. We've already talked about what the letters mean. It is on the back as well. If you do have any extras, please pass them back so people have them, but just make sure everyone has a copy. I hope we have enough, inshallah. There were, I think, how many copies made? We can print more if you really need one. I'm not, during the break, you can fill these out. I am not going to force you to. If you feel like, you know what, I know my personality, I'm perfect, alhamdulillah, good for you. If you feel like I don't want to know my personality, I'm scared, I can relate. But just to explain how to fill it out. So you've got a bunch of questions on the front after the introduction, right? They're not really questions, they're statements. You are going to put a number next to each one of these from 1 to 5. Whether you agree very strongly, that's 5, or you disagree, that's 1. For example, number 3 is, I am always prepared. Now, if I had a pen, I'd put 1. I don't have one, I'm not really prepared. But when you're done that, if you flip the page over, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, but it's really not. You'll see the EACNO because they did it in a different order. Next to each one of those is a number and then plus or minus some other subscript. You put, let's say I answered number 1, I'm the life of the party, with a 2. Over there after the 20, there's a 1, I'd put my number 2 there. So I'm going to add up and you'll see they go down from top to bottom. So you just sort of copy your numbers in there and then you do the math and you get a number at the end. And the highest score wins. No, I'm kidding. It's again, it's so that you can learn more about yourself. You can see where you are. There's no judgment here, right? As an example of no judgment, just so you know, you don't feel bad filling this out, right? Openness to experience. Sorry, I'll cover the no, I like the openness to new experiences. Is the personality trait of seeking new experience and intellectual pursuits. High scores may daydream a lot. Low scores may be very down to earth. We need people who are down to earth. We need people who daydream. They come up with new ideas, right? Both are beneficial. It's just good to know where you are on that scale, right? Any questions on how to fill it out? It's pretty clear. Start by 1 to 5 for each of the statements and then copy it to the number on the back. Yep. Sure. So if you look at the back, you'll see E equals 20 plus, and then there's a 1 in brackets. Your answer to number 1 over here, your number 1 to 5, goes in there. And then if you go down, not across, you'll see number 2 there. You can copy your answer, number 3, because each of those questions is related to the letter, right? So questions 1, 6, 11, 16, 21, 25, 31, 36, 41, and 46 are copied into the first row. Those are the number from 1 to 5 in there. Then you just do the math. 20 plus 3 minus 2 plus this, and you get a number at the end. And that'll tell you where you are on the scale.
And we're going to take a break. There's, I think, some chai and some refreshments at the back. So this is optional. Like if you like, please feel free to like go eat, drink, refresh yourselves. You can fill this out afterwards at home. You can do the scoring later on as well. You could just go to a therapist and they will do this for you. This is a psychometric test, so it's a little bit difficult to score and understand, but it's just something for you to do. So inshallah, we will take a break until 12:20. So like a 13-minute break. So 12:20, we'll come back and then we're going to talk about LGBTQ and trans stuff, and then end off on a positive note with Islamic psychology and how to develop good akhlaq using the Tarbiyah model that Khalil Center has developed. Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. If you could just finish up slowly what you're doing and make your way back. Jazakallah. Okay, we're going to get started in 1 minute, inshallah. Sorry, we are finishing just after ones and we have a fair bit to get through still.
Okay, I'm going to resume. Inshallah. That was 1 minute. I was gonna do 30 seconds. Okay, we'll wait 30 more seconds. Yeah. Should I start now? Start now? Should I start now? Okay. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We're going to continue our second last topic for the day because it is usually a very requested topic and a very difficult one to talk about. Which is around gender, sexuality, and LGBTQ because it's such a common problem and concern, especially within the school system and just in society in general. Just a quick disclaimer here, this is a relatively new topic. So the research also, the Islamic psychology research is not as robust. We are still looking at different fatwas and legal decisions. So we are not giving any sort of fatwas here about gender change and things like that. And just to be mindful that reintegrative therapy is now illegal in Canada. So you cannot go to a therapist and say, I am gay, make me straight again. That is not allowed. If you go to a Muslim psychotherapist, they can help you with your feelings, but they cannot call it reintegrative therapy. So just putting that out there. Okay, so what is transgender? Just to make sure that we are on the same page about these terms, lots of different terms within the LGBTQ umbrella. Transgender is just a macro level term for people whose gender identity differs from their sex that was assigned at birth to them. And people just call it trans these days as just an abbreviation. Intersex is more of a biological chromosomal difference so that the genitals or the gonads they cannot be distinguished as either male or female. And from the hadith, we also learn about individuals in the Prophet's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who were intersex. But we don't learn about transgender as much. But again, the research is being done now on this. With regards to gender theories, a lot of what we see nowadays is from Judith Butler. She is a feminist researcher, psychologist, a professor who came up with a lot of these gender-based theories that there is no such thing as gender. So from Judith Butler, I had to even research her in my dissertation. Just to understand where is all of this coming from. And these theories, they unfortunately misrepresent the reductionist approach of biological sex. And their sort of concern is that why have male and female? Why have man and woman? We're not even following traditional gender roles, so just get rid of gender completely. Okay, that's sort of the current perception. Currently, there is no coherent message about gender. We see this LGBTQ everywhere, but everyone is confused now as to who is what and what is who. It's one of the most fragmented concepts in our society. And the irony is that we are stressing the irrelevance of gender, but we are also completely consumed by the concept of gender at work, right? Under your email signature, you have to write he, him, she, her. You have to say my pronouns are this and I'm that. So we are consumed by this gender. Okay, so I have a case study here for you, and we didn't even talk about the Islamic perspective or anything. So just a case study if you want to explain it to them.
Your child comes home and he wants to either be friends with, or a little less of a case, he's got somebody in his group he's working on a project with who says, or he tells you that, there's somebody in my group, they're saying their name is Alex and they're non-binary. So they want to be referred to as they. So what's your response to your child going to look like?
And use again those principles of attachment, the ocean personality, as well as the other things that we talked about, as well as principles of counseling as well. And see, and this one I think we don't have to do as a group. We can just shout it out. Just you can put your hand up and here.
I I like this answer, okay, for a couple reasons. One, you teach your child this is where Islam sets the line, right? And maybe your child's not old enough for you to delve in the details of it, but you make sure they know that, hey, this is not what we partake in. But at the same time, you don't turn around and tell your child, and they're evil, and they're going to hell, and they're the worst thing in the world. And we laugh, right? But when we grew up, anything to do with LGBTQ was talked about worse than animals. And in reality, as we grow up, as Islam expands, you meet people who have these urges and they can't explain where they come from, but they know that Islam says this is not permissible, and so they don't act on it. And they go to a talk and the scholar talks to them like they're a dog, and they feel like, you know what, I feel like I'm worse than human now, right? I won't get into examples. There's actually famous people on YouTube. They're Muslim now, and they talk about they've never acted on what they feel, but they sometimes feel othered by this conversations. It's an excellent way of pointing out, hey, we still have respect for them, right? I didn't mean that as a joke, as a pun, but we have respect for all of them, right? But we disagree, and we have that right.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. So that's exactly, I would say, like validation, empathy as well. Especially living in this society, you can get in a lot of trouble if you like say anything against these individuals. But someone who's working with you, like at work, at school, you're like a fellow teacher, and your colleague is someone within this group, there should be no issue necessarily. You could refer to them as they, whatever they want to be referred to as, but would you go to the pride parade? No, like that's where you can have your boundaries as well. And this is a huge issue, especially for Muslim kids. And now in therapy, we are seeing Muslim children who are also confused about their gender. And that's what we'll talk about next. That with regards to the Islamic perspective, of course, we have several ayahs, surahs in the Quran that talk about the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us in pairs. These are complementary pairs, not competitive. I know we have lots of gender wars that we hate all men, or women are like this, and this is not the Islamic tradition. The reason for men and women is that we find love and mercy and protection from each other, not competition and hatred. And the Islamic perspective also goes into the fact that gender is not just a biological thing. It's not superficial. And we have this idea that gender is bimodal and not binary. I'm going to skip this for just a second. So binary is that you're either man or woman. But within the Islamic tradition, gender roles, and I'll ask Irfan to touch upon this in just a second as well, that yes, we have two categories, but that does not mean that there's no variance within the categories. So if you think of a bimodal curve versus a bell curve, for example, there are overlaps in the categories as well. And just like our physical bodies, we are meant to help each other with our ibadah, with our ultimate purpose of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think what's happening in modern day society is that we have reduced gender so much, but gender actually is very broad within the Islamic tradition. And there's no that only women can do this or only men can do this. There's a lot of variance in the things that both of us can do together. And there's no that I think a lot of people are confused with gender sort of traditions and cultures that only men can play sports and women can't play sports. And the research shows that the more rigid we are with our kids in terms of gender roles, the more they tend to deviate from their gender and would like to be like the other gender. So I will proudly say I was a tomboy when I was 11, played cricket, table tennis, swimming. Like I just loved playing with like my dad. My brother just did not like makeup and high heels and all of these things. But does that mean I want to be a man? No, I was just like, I was a girl and I still like doing those types of things, but it doesn't mean you have to change your gender. And my parents thankfully did not stop me from playing sports. I joined the softball team. I did all of this stuff, because just because you're a girl doesn't mean you can't do these things. But when we make gender super specific into these activities are for girls, these activities are for men or boys, then we do see the research shows and clinical evidence shows that the youth tend to adopt the other gender.
So a quick note here, because this topic comes up a lot. First of all, it's difficult for a woman to talk about gender issues because the moment she does, especially gender roles, everyone wants to label them a feminist. So I'll take on a bit of that and discuss it. If you call me a feminist, I'm not. I'm not a masculinist. I'm neither of those things. A quick point, because this comes up especially in left-wing circles in Islam, as well as an attack on Islam. Allah does not have a gender. Okay, the English lacks a gender non-specific pronoun, a respectful one. You want to use the word it to translate huwa, but in Arabic, I'm not going to get into the details of it. It can be used for other things other than male or female. But in English, we don't have one. And so we use he in the translation of the Quran. There's people who've decided that they're offended by that. They want to use she. It's an English translation. If it gets the point across, it is what it is. Allah does not have a gender. Okay, we make that clear. But that being said, Allah has created two genders, right? And because of the historical context and because of what's happened over the past 100 years, it has created a lot of confusion around the topic of gender. If you go back, and if you're a student of history, I'm a big fan of history. It teaches a lot about ourselves. But go back before the Industrial Revolution, before farming equipment, everyone worked. Okay, male, female, everyone had to work. There are hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ when he went to Medina, which was a farming village, and he talked to the women in the fields. He went specifically to where the women were working. Now, I'm not suggesting men and women have to work together, but I'm just pointing out that historically, everyone worked, and usually to the bone, right? It is a luxury to be able to sit here in an air-conditioned room with fans on and talk about psychology and philosophy and these kinds of things and history, right? Because normally people would be working to get enough food to survive till tomorrow, right? Now, there's been a push, strangely enough, over the past 40, 50 years to promote this worldview of the 1950s, 1960s, like Leave It to Beaver, mom stays home and works, dad does this, and that is the religious point of view. Islam doesn't touch on these topics, and for a very good reason, right? Because societies change, challenges change, things change. I'm not telling you which one to do, but when you get married, you and your wife, you and your husband, you have to sit down and discuss those things. You have to come to a conclusion on what life is going to look like for you guys. And as long as there's love and mercy and understanding between you, however it looks, your children will be better off for it. Right? When it becomes like you get married to someone in university, she wanted to go on do this, you want to go on do that, but then 2 years later you went on some alt-right website and realized that women should stay home and do the following. Now you're going to have a conflict. And I'm not saying you're right or wrong, but that conflict's not going to bode well for either your marriage or your raising of your children, right? When the Prophet Muhammad when Aisha radiallahu anha was asked about the Prophet's life at home, she said he would help with the chores. So that this idea of like, women take care of this, men take care of that, doesn't really flow with our prophetic tradition, right? You can help out with things, right? It is a shared responsibility. Now, with that being said, you're working 3 jobs and just making rent, probably not going to have much time for house chores, right? We can't go through every possibility right now, right? But to think that there is some formula that if you adhere to this, you're following some, Islamic tradition, let that idea go, right? Because when you do follow a very rigid gender role, that you think your daughter should do the following, your sons should do the following, girls can't play sports, as an example, then you're planting a seed that somehow she's a disadvantage for being a girl. And that seed can grow when she goes to school and gets exposed to these weird ideas that claim that, no, you can be a boy if you want to, a'udhu billah, right? And I hope none of you ever have to deal with that, but we can try and mitigate that by making sure that we give our children opportunities and treat them as people, not try and create rigid gender roles.
Just to add a point here as well, that just to make it like super like concrete, I can just use like our example as well. So when I was in first or second year, like most of my friends in undergrad were getting married or getting engaged. And then nothing wrong with that. Even my parents were like, get married, stop studying. But they were not allowed to study or work afterwards. And now their kids are older and they kind of have lost their full identities. It's mostly for like the moms and women I'm talking to. They were not able to study the Quran. They were not able to study or work or do anything. Like their entire life was their children. Now their children are gone. And now they're like have clinical depression because they have lost themselves as a Muslim woman, as a woman in general. So just to kind of put in perspective here. So like my son will be like, he'll sometimes tell his friends if he is feeling proud of me. Usually he's just embarrassed of me. He's like, oh, my mom's a professor and my dad makes the best pancakes. So usually be the reverse, right? Like your mom is the one cooking and your dad is a professor. And like my husband's like, I don't have a PhD. I don't care if you do it. And I can't make pancakes to save my life. I can make a boxed pancake, but my husband makes the best from scratch pancakes with chocolate chips. So it's okay. Like these things are not from the Quran and Sunnah. As long as you have an understanding with your spouse, with your family, as well. And the sad thing is that because our culture is so like just perpetuates these gender norms, that within my master's program, PhD program, there was not a single Muslim girl in the entire York University psychology program and master's program, McMaster, not a single Muslim girl. And we need Muslim women to become neuroscientists, to become psychologists, because then we have issues in our society that need to be dealt with through Muslim women as well. So just my little rant over there. An Islamic perspective, just very quickly, I'm going to go over this. Gets a little bit into the legal definition, so please ask an Islamic scholar about this. This is just what I have learned at Al Huda Institute and through a few other courses. Very, very limited knowledge here about effeminate or trans people in the Prophet's time as well. They did exist. It's not a new thing. So number one, from the legal perspective, is that they are created that way. If you have a child, a nephew, or a niece, you can get that tested. But intersex is a very, very small population within our society. There are those individuals who are not created that way. This is the one that is incorrect within our deen. So if you see your child, a nephew, niece, or a cousin who is choosing to imitate a man and they're a girl, or they're choosing to imitate women and it's a boy or a man, then this is where the problem lies. And again, there is help for that as well. So there's lots of different narrations and hadith about if you are feeling this way, the one that you're feeling closer to, if you are like ambiguous in terms of your sexual desires, choose that gender and try your best to stick to that gender for the rest of your life. Not easy to do when you're having mixed feelings. This is for trans, for lesbian, gay, all of like the sexual disorders. There are lots of Muslim groups of individuals and therapists who have these types of struggles, and they help other Muslims as well to stay on the right path, to accept their feelings, but not to act on their behavior. So if anyone needs help with any of these, I can refer you to these therapists as well. Because I think I've seen it in like family, I've seen it in clients. I think may Allah like protect us from this. One of the most difficult tests, I think, is a test of these types of sexual desires. Like you are feeling one way and you are not allowed to get married to someone of the same gender. It's a super, super difficult test to go through. Okay.
Quick case study. You have a 5-year-old nephew. You want to go, and I'm going to make this like a forced decision. You're about to go, I don't know, snowboarding with them, or you're going to go sledding with them, but they don't have their boots. You go to the store, and this is what you see, and it's a boy. These are the options. They really want to go sledding. What are you going to do?
Do you let them? And why or why not? Is there any problem with this? And you guys can just raise your hands. Yes.
Sister? You would let them decide whether they want to do it or not? Okay. Okay.
Perfect.
Again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the sister pointed out that if you leave it up to the child, they're likely to just say no because they're aware of what the color pink means. That's a good answer. Or they really want to go sledding so much they know what they're in for. They know there's going to be comments, but they're okay with it because they really want to sled, and they'll probably throw them out when they're done. Or okay, we've got the engineer in the room, or you could just put the snow pants over them, put a bag over them, and then you're good. No, you're right. You're right. So we're coming up with solutions to the pink, but the point of it was, and there's no right answer here because historically, blue was a girl's color and pink was a boy's color. So some people know history, right? Oddly enough, like when a child was born, you'd give pink to the boys and blue to the girls, right? Pink was like a reddish color, it's like a red thing, but pink was a softer color, right? And so you'd give pink, but now norms have changed. And so you have to consider those norms because you don't want your, you don't just, I'm going to defy society and dress my child up in pink, my son in pink every day and send him to school. He's going to come home bullied a lot, right? So you have to weigh all of these things, including the time in which they're born, right? And what it means, what's going to be said, what they're going to go through. These are the kinds of things, like that's why we brought this up. It encourages conversation. I mean, they really want to go sledding on one hand, right? So maybe you can just look for a solution, like cover it with snow pants, do your best, but don't deprive them of that. But at the same time, you have to understand what they're going to go through when they wear pink boots. So
Just before we go to the last section, Sean, then we will wrap up. Someone had mentioned to my daughter, she's 4. She's all, have 4-year-olds. Their favorite color changes like every 2 days. So now it was like blue at one point, and because our societal norms are so strong, we were at like a family gathering, and somebody said, "Oh, how come your favorite color is blue? It should be pink." So even like we don't leave even our 4-year-olds alone about gender. So just to be a little bit more, it's very broad gender from an Islamic perspective. Western perspective, yes, it's like pink is for girls, blue is for boys. This is what each gender does. There were 2 hands up. There's one hand. Yes, go ahead. Sure. Yes.
yeah, if I could take that question. The question was more about boys playing with girls' toys. There's in this society, it seems like the girls are allowed to play with the boys' toys, but if the boys play with any of the girls' toys, it's like, oh no, we're really worried about what's going to happen. When it comes to LGBTQ issues, if that's what you're worried about and concerned about, there's very little research done, but there's no indication that playing with toys affects any of that. And so, in my opinion, I'd be okay with it. I mean, my son loves to play with stuffies and all the rest of it. The reason there's very little research is because you're not allowed to research that much, right? Because it's seen almost as offensive, like you're trying to find out where this came from. This is my identity. It came from me, right? You can't try and like pry, but most of the little bit that's been done, no, there's no indication that affects anything. You could be fine with the boys playing with whatever they want to play with.
There's a little bit of research done on boys playing with dolls and stuffed animals, and that it has shown not like a significant, but a little bit of increases in empathy. So it helps them to increase their empathy when they play with like dolls and stuffed animals. And the way I got around to it is my son all of a sudden just wanted like kind of like a not a doll house, but just like a house with characters. So I got the Montessori style one, which is not pink. It's like wooden, which is solid wood color, oak color, and it came with little like figures that don't look like dolls. It just look like little puppets. So that was like sort of my way of
So now he's playing with miniatures as opposed to, which is like a collector's item. There you go. Yep. No, I would draw a line there. As they reach 9 and 10, to sort of explain what things they're not allowed to do as a boy or what things they shouldn't be doing as a girl, that's where you really want to start making it clear that, yeah, lipstick, jewelry, these are things that are for women, and you explain why, right? They may not have the hormones yet to understand those urges, but it sort of sets the stage for that. And that you're right, you've crossed into like that point where it's more like, this is more adult stuff now, right? So it's more of a discussion of like, as you're becoming an adult, which one are you becoming? Yeah.
There's 2 hands up. Yes, this is sure first. Go ahead.
So the choice, to be clear, wasn't that there were blue available, right? It was you want to go sledding and they only have pink boots, right? So do you want to buy these knowing what it means? Like, yeah, you're going to make fun of or not? Now, I think to the point of giving them a choice and how that affects later on when they're 18, um, this decision is not as significant. Right, but I think the point was that you may think that it affects their decisions when it comes to gender, and maybe you're right, because when it comes to colors and all the rest of it, that's why there's no right answer. But you can't, we can't draw a direct line saying that if kids wear pink or we let them wear pink, then they're gonna maybe choose a different, that line doesn't exist, right? And so you can't say that by giving them a choice, we're enabling something later on. right? Sure. And to be honest, I have a pink shirt as well. I think the point was more that the pink being related to gender is very it's a tenuous link to LGBTQ, right? And so that's why it's like this society is so rigid, but in our culture and our religion, we're not, right? So don't buy into everything this culture says about gender. But at the same time, you do have to be aware of it because they could be made fun of for it or bullied for it. But you don't have to buy into everything they say because, as a brother pointed out, it switches every few years anyway, right? 20 years ago was different. And so it's okay to let them make that choice, and as long as they're aware of everything that comes with it. But the rest of your life, you're going to make sure that they're not going down. I mean, if they're always choosing pink, they're always choosing, and they're leaning towards something, maybe you have something to watch out for. But if they really want to go sledding and like, I just get me boots, right? Then it's okay to have the pink in that sense.
I'm going to continue, inshallah, for the last section, then 1:40 Dhuhr. So we'll wrap up at 1:15, and then we're here for like another 30 minutes for Q&A. So please feel free to come to us with any other questions, inshallah. Okay, so the very last section, sorry, just before we go into this, someone had asked about self-harm. I promised them I would talk about self-harm really quickly. We talked about trauma. I was going to talk about suicide, but suicide is a whole other like workshop that we do, which is very, very heavy. That is also increasing, unfortunately, within our Muslim youth as well, but just not to go into suicide. We'll talk about self-harm. Self-harm and trauma, if that's another like indicator, if your child is being abused, one of the indicators could be self-harm. The psychological theory is that you harm yourself. It's a little bit graphic, sorry. It's like when you see your own blood or you see your own skin coming off, you feel something. So that feeling gets rid of the numbness that you are feeling because of depression, abuse, or anxiety. That's sort of the one psychological theory as to why people self-harm. Older people self-harm, teenagers self-harm. The highest ratio of demographics is teenage girls. So girls tend to self-harm more than boys. If you are a teacher, and there's lots of teachers here who came for staff enrichment, as well as Shasi was mentioning, if you see a student who has like marks on their hands, and I have seen that in when I do workshops, I've seen that at Al Huda Institute. Somebody was making wudu, she rolled up her sleeves, and I was like, what is on your arm? But again, validation, empathy, safe space, non-judgmental attitude. Just stay curious, like, hey, I noticed some marks on your hand. And most times people have admitted to it, like mostly people, but I think because I was also a counselor with Al Huda, so they would say, yeah, Sister Kashmal, I do cut myself sometimes. And then the story comes out. So self-harm also exists, but just know the warning signs. But self-harm is something that you definitely don't try and deal with it yourself as a parent. Get some professional help, talk to a therapist, because self-harm can lead to suicidal ideation, which can lead to worse things. Okay, so the last thing we're talking about, inshallah, hopefully no more like scary and serious stuff, is just the importance of akhlaq, right? Just developing good character. The next, I would say 10 slides or so are adapted from the Khalil Center. I used to work there, and I did this workshop with them as well. Just want to shout out to Dr. Human, who was my supervisor. So this is their research, it's not mine. And just the importance of social behavior. The research shows that there is a lot of evidence looking at social and emotional skills in children and how that enhances their adult life, even as they become parents themselves. So we focus, I think, a lot on academic skills, SATs, MCATs, right? All of these like standardized scores. But we see the research indicating that kids who are more empathetic, they're non-judgmental, they know how to validate someone, they know how to express their emotions, they tend to be more secure parents themselves and adults later on in life. I'm just going to skip this. This is a very similar thing. Okay.
So before I get to this, because I know the Q&A is now going to be a little delayed or maybe even done at the table and not part of the program, my brother asked a question earlier that I thought was very important. I wanted to bring it up. He said that we talked earlier about controlling your temper and sort of like, tempering the way you talk to your children. So they mess up as children do, as everyone does. And rather than respond with anger, you want us to sort of hold it back repress it a little bit so that we can talk to them nicely, and they're better for it, and we all agree, right? No one's saying that, yelling at kids is good for them. But what about the effect on your mental health, the effect to you? Because this constant, like, okay, I got to dial it back. Okay, I got to dial it back. That can do your head in, right? That can mess up your own mental health. And then that's worse for your kids anyway, right? So a couple points to that. If it's happening very often, then you need to ask yourself why you're getting angry so often. Now, again, we haven't talked about the severity of what your child did, right? They come home and they beat up 6 kids at school because they got angry. Okay, I'm gonna, right, now I'm angry, right? And maybe I should show a little of that anger so he knows, but also, talk about it rationally. But if it's like literally everything that they do, every little button they push, and you're off the hook, that would indicate that something's going on in your life that you need to go and maybe see a therapist about. Because what you want to do is get to the point where you're not holding back your anger, but you're not even feeling the anger. Again, we talk about ideals, right? But if you're reaching like peak anger every time they do one thing wrong, you're right, it's going to mess up your mental health. And talking to a therapist is an important step in resolving that. Maybe there's something going on in your life. I know when I went through some tough times at work, somebody told me that I was getting angry a little too often, right? And I had to think about it and realize, you know what, you're right, because I'm not thinking about being with my family. I'm thinking about what's going on at work. And so everything that goes wrong here is just one more thing I have to deal with, and I'm not even present to deal with it, right? Alhamdulillah, it worked out in the end, but I had to realize I had to calm down. I brought it up related to this because every interaction like that, if you do end up giving in, or even if the kids notice that you're holding back your anger, because kids aren't dumb, they can see that, it creates a negative interaction. And it takes, even if you do mess up like that, because it does happen, right? You need multiple, some have a formula of 3 to 1, but multiple positive interactions to make up for that. And so that's where you need to spend time doing things that your kids enjoy, right? Rather than forcing them to do the things that you're doing as work, you need to try and carve out time. And I know everyone's lives are busy, but even 20 minutes doing something they enjoy. My son loves Legos. It's on there. I enjoy Lego too. It's great. It works out, right? I really enjoyed Lego as a kid, still enjoy as an adult, right? It's gotten super expensive. So we try and reuse the same set, but still it's fun. My daughter loves tea time. I don't, but I play along with her, right? Because it's what she needs to see and she enjoys it. And, I maybe just run around the room a bit too, get some exercise, but you have to spend time doing things they enjoy. We have another thing we do called monster game. I'm the monster. I throw them around the room safely. They both seem to enjoy that. So that's, again, positive interactions will make up for the times you mess up, right?
And there were a couple of studies that indicated this the trauma response, that for every one negative interaction that you have with your child, you need to have 3 positive interactions to kind of make up or cancel out that negative. So it's a lot of work. So I'm like, okay, should I just even forget about getting angry? So you do have to have 3 positive interactions, and we will show you a video at the end. It's just like a funny YouTube video, just showing on how not to be with your kids. You guys may recognize a YouTuber as well. Is that you, the consultation? This one? Okay. The other perspective on this was around consultation. Just very briefly here, we learn about shura in the Quran as well. We don't apply it necessarily to our kids because we think, okay, 12 and under kids, why do we have to consult them? They don't know anything anyway. But if it's a big decision, family therapists do indicate to maybe not consult them, at least inform them. I've had clients come into my office saying, Sister Kashmala, I didn't know my parents were moving to a different country until yesterday. And now I'm like losing all my friends, going to a different house, different school. So you gotta communicate with your kids. A big thing like your dad's losing his job, or like there's gonna be a financial setback, or we're moving, or something is happening. We're going through a divorce, something that is happening. Once things are like a little bit more finalized, according to developmental ability, we have to consult and let our kids know what is happening. That will affect them. Something that's not going to affect them, you don't have to consult little kids, especially. And teenagers, I think, are wonderful. I know we get so scared of teenagers, but they can really give you good feedback. If you want them to create a pros and cons list, they'll go on Chat GPT and make a list for you. I think they can be very resourceful in consultation.
Add to that. So I spent 10 years working next to my father at the same job. And my brother spent 6 months before me, and he gave me some advice when I came in. He said, Dad's not going to respect you until you can prove that you can program properly. And so he's going to reject every one of your ideas for the first 5 or 6 months. And he was right. But then it's the next 9.5 years, it was a collaborative, like he suddenly had respect because I had ideas that, he respected. Um, don't force your kids to prove themselves to you. Try and get to the point where you can, get them involved, and you're training them to make decisions. So as they reach 11 and 12, you can get them involved in some decision-making process. And actually, if you really have a problem letting go of control, give them options where you're okay with either one, right? So if you don't want them to do something, you don't, let's say you're asking them, what should we do with this space on the side? Should we put stones or grass? Or, well, if you don't want something, don't make it an option to them, right? Especially if you're very, you really want that control, then give them options that, amongst these three, which do you think is best and why? And then you discuss it with them, right? Get them involved in those decisions.
Okay, and then last little part here, inshallah, is a child inventory of Islamic virtues. If you go on the Khalil Center website, khalilcenter.com, it should be on the front page or one of the tabs there. You can complete this scale. I know this is just like the first page. It's a lot of questions. This is for the parents to complete for their children. There's one for teenagers to complete for themselves. So a young child would not be able to do this. But you're basically going along each of these traits, behaviors, and just rating your child, what you think as a parent your child needs to work on. This is an empirically validated research like scale. So there is data behind it as well. And there's more research being done on this. That's number one. But secondly is this other model. So Khalil Center loves their like Islamic psychology models. These are the 4 central sort of ways of developing good character. It's a very, very detailed research-based model. I'm going to go through it just really quickly. The first one is just your personal disposition, your fitra, what you are born as, your personality. Second one is ta'lim, which is teaching your kids. That's more the cognition, the brain aspect of just giving your kids knowledge. The third one is habit development. So that is your behavior. So helping your kids develop positive behaviors. The third one is experiential teaching, which is more on the emotional side of things, the social relationship side of things. And the final aspect of developing good character is social modeling, or suhba, as it's called from an Islamic perspective. So imitating and having good role models. With regards to personality and predispositions, each child we know comes with a set of inborn traits, which is called their temperament, or their fitra, as we call it from an Islamic perspective. So you have to work with your child's temperament. So you can, of course, take them for therapy, have good social models, help yourself understand your personality better, but you have to kind of tailor your approach to that specific child's temperament and their personality. The second aspect was ta'lim, as we mentioned earlier. Just even dialogue, there's so much research on just dialogue, talking with our kids, and not talking like clean your room, go do this, go to school, pack your lunch, like not that kind of talking, not instructional talking, just a dialogue. Like, oh, what do you think about, I don't know, the weather today? Or what do you think I should wear today? Or just like a normal conversation. Even with younger children, this works really well because as you are elaborating, arguing, explaining, it really helps that the neural part, the neural connections in the brain that are to do with language and social learning as well. So this is just, I think we mentioned earlier about play and playful instruction. So definitely do not be shy in using humor and comedy. There's so many memes and YouTube videos out there on how to be like just being funny as a parent. So don't be scared to use humor in the ta'lim, in the knowledge aspect of tarbiyah and character development. With regards to playful instruction, one thing that I would just mention really quickly here is, again, with each child's temperament, sometimes you think, okay, all kids are like, all of my kids are maybe morning people or evening people. So just meet your child where they are. So my son is like very much a morning person. So I know in the morning, I can like tell him to like do things, but he actually really feels that secure attachment at night. So when my daughter goes to sleep, because he's 9, he can stay up a little bit later. We homeschool, so we don't have to wake up that early for school or anything. His favorite thing to do is can we play chess? So I just play like a game of chess. Takes like 20, 25 minutes. If he's really like trying to beat me, will take a little bit longer. So before sleeping is like my time with him. With my daughter, it's usually at snack time because she loves having like her chocolate chip cookies, and I can talk to her at that time. So really figure out when your child is best to connect with. With regards to behaviors, again, in terms of building resilience, I think the grandmothers at the back were mentioning that kids nowadays are just really spoiled and we're just entertaining them and we're making everything too easy for them. And that is part of this Islamic psychology model of behavior as well, that you want to support your child. You don't want to be neglectful and you don't want to be permissive, but you don't want to solve every problem for your child. And it is scary. It is happening even at undergraduate levels. These are kids who are like not even kids. They're 20, 21-year-olds at university. And they will sometimes need like their mom and dad to come and talk to the professor. My students who come and talk to me when I'm teaching a class, they won't even make eye contact. They're 20-year-old students and they're so socially anxious and they need like their mom and dad for everything. So that is a problem.
It does get worse. There's stories from hiring managers across North America who had first-time grads come to an interview for a job with their parents, and they had to tell the parents, no, you're not allowed to be here. And there was an argument, as the parents wanted to be in that room, and the kid was so used to having them around. It's getting out of hand.
And we can definitely use the Quran and Sunnah to normalize resilience and hardship. We have lots of stories from the Quran and Sunnah from the different prophets, the Sahabas, that hardship is the normal state of this life. Inshallah, we will get to chill and have fun in Jannah. But in this life, it is about work. So that also can be used as a form of behavioral training. The third one, with regards to emotional teaching, the research shows in this model, especially by Dr. Human at Khalil Center, he talks a lot about experiential teaching for emotional teaching. That's where you are engaging in pro-social behavior. So maybe you're volunteering at the soup kitchen, you're maybe donating to an orphan sponsorship program. I think today, like Islamic Relief was doing like a run for Gaza type of thing. So taking kids there, for example, doing a walk or a donation. So these things actually can help children develop more of that emotional resilience as well. And the final one about suhba, the research sort of term is called counterfactual modeling or counterfactual models, which is basically you prompt your child to imagine a role model that they look up to. Because by the time they're teenagers, like they hate you, they don't want to do with you, they're differentiated, they're not looking up to you as role models, which is fine. We can accept that and we can go to therapy for that. But someone that they do look up to, maybe a Muslim basketball player, maybe like, I don't know, a cool Muslim like nasheed artist or something, and just say, how do you think this person would act? Of course, the ideal would be, how do you think the Prophet ﷺ would behave? So that would be the ideal if they looked at him or another Sahaba or a Sahabiya for a role modeling. One way to not talk about exemplars, because sometimes people will use role modeling in the reverse. So don't do this. This is, I think a lot of us were kind of grew up with this, was, did you see your cousin? They did so well in their exam. So now you're comparing. This is not social modeling. This is comparison for competition. Did you see the neighbor's kid? They're so well behaved. They say assalamu alaikum so nicely. They shake my hand. Or the worst, which is sibling rivalry. You're creating sibling competition. Did you see your brother or sister? Why can't you be more like him or her? So just staying away from, I think we probably have heard all of these from our parents, which is fine. This is the best sort that they knew at that time. And I kind of want you to be better because of that one cousin that we were all jealous of, but try not to be like this with this generation, inshallah. Okay, so I went through that really quickly. So I don't know who was paying attention, but whoever puts their hand up first, we have one more prize, inshallah. What were the 4 ways of acquiring good character according to the Islamic psychology model? Yes. Okay. Yep. Yep. Good. Good. I think did you miss? There was, what is missing? Experiential learning. Good. You got the Arabic terms as well, mashallah. Amazing job. Really, really well done. Okay, I will come and give you the prize, inshallah. Okay.
So before we close off, I am gonna talk about, maybe do a quick review, sort of. Not really, it's a fake review because I'm not going to cover everything. But if we're going to take away from what we discussed today, first and foremost, we talked about intention, right? I mean, we're not here to point fingers at other people or as another point to point fingers at the generation before us. Everyone does the best they can with what they have, with what's going on in society, what's going on in their lives. The point of this is to have tips and techniques so that you can raise your children better, but also have a better connection with them, right? Second is personality, and I have to touch on this point because when it comes to anything physical, we're very accepting that people are different, right? I mean, if someone's born 4 foot tall, you don't expect them to become a basketball player. They reach 4 foot. I mean, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen, right? It's just not in the cards for you. It's just the way it works. But when someone has a different personality, we tend to push them in other directions. They're introverted. No, but this is an extrovert's world. You've got to go out there. You got to do it. You have to deal with it. We tend not to be as understanding of personality differences, right? I could go through many cases, but I don't have time. We'll do a video at the end, okay? So just keep in mind that your children are a different personality than you. You can notice certain things, but there's a really good quote on the back of this book I've just been looking at, and it applies to the heart as much as it does personality. So I'm just going to read it. The heart is too much of a mystery for us to approach its healing as a simple matter of finding and fixing the problem. Methods alone cannot meet the deep, aching need of souls that cry not for solutions, but for connection. I could spend hours talking about how we've turned our society into a mathematical formulaic society where we're always looking for an answer, the answer. And so when you look at a problem with a child, you think, okay, A, B, C, done, solved. That's not it, right? Focus on building a connection with your children through mercy, compassion, the time whatever you can give them, given your life situation. And when things do go wrong, because life does go wrong, you can draw on that connection to help guide them back, right? Maybe they come home and they're like, hey, they have, may Allah protect you. Maybe they have certain feelings. You can help guide them back away from that. Maybe they have bad friends. And rather than come home and say, I don't want you talking to those boys anymore, done. You can coax them away from that gently, right? You can guide them towards better options because you have a connection with them, right? And the final point is, and this was brought about earlier when we were talking about it, it is natural for a parent to want to give their child everything in this world, right? It's not good for them. As everyone's pointed out at the back, the brothers are talking about it too. It's a natural inclination. You have to stop yourself. You're not going to build resilient children if you solve all their problems and make their life as easy as possible, right? They may be rich, they may be considered successful in this world, but they will be brats, they will be spoiled, and they're likely not going to be the best Muslims or have the best character. So may Allah protect all our children and give us the guidance to be good parents. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.
We're just going to end off with this video. So this video shows you everything opposite that we have talked about. So really bad attachment, no understanding of personality, no secure attachment, all of that stuff. It's just a funny video just to kind of help us end off on a light note. And just a couple of housekeeping things here as well. So just Salado is just handing out the letter to my child activity. You can feel free to do it after we're done the workshop as people are coming up and asking questions. We're still here to like 1:40, inshallah. It's a letter that you can write to one or all of your children. We have structured it a little bit, and it's writing it in like the style of Surah Luqman. So how Luqman advised his son. Of course, we can use modern day language as well, but you can include maybe 2 or 3 things that you learned from this workshop and impart that to your child. That's an activity that you can do here or at home. With the personality as well, if you need help scoring your test or understanding your personality, if you got really like traumatized by like, why am I this personality? You can come talk to me, inshallah. We'll help you feel better about that. And finally, there are some books here that really helped me with my parenting. Some are Christian based, some are Islamically focused, and some are just like neutral. So if you want to have a look at that. So we'll just watch this video and then we will end, inshallah.
What are you wearing?
Oh. It works.
Zizi, what are you wearing? Go put a thong right now. Put on a thong. What is this?
That's the max it's getting. Okay. No, I can try.
Just put your spike.
What are you wearing? Go put on soul right now. Put on a soul. What is this? Roblox. What about Rockets?
Okay, you can just watch it, and we can fill in the
Go
audio.
play some Rockets right now. Disney? Repeat after me. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. What are you doing?
I'm reading my book.
You're reading your book, or you're reading the wrong book. Read this one.
Abby, let's go play.
Let's go play.
Yeah.
Son, let's go pray. Come. Hurry up. Ankle to ankle, foot to foot. Zizi.
Okay, so that's just a funny sort of just a snippet of things to not do if you were not attending this workshop. You might be behaving like that with your kids as well. Do you want to say any last first? Okay, inshallah. Okay, so we will end here. I think we already said the dua as well. Jazakallah khair everyone for coming, the teachers who came as well for their staff enrichment. We see some of the youth and kids coming, so come on in as well. Join your parents. My kids are here as well. And Jazakallah khair again for coming. We do apologize if we said anything triggering or wrong. Parenting is a very personal journey, and may Allah accept it from all of us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan kasira, Dr. Kashmala and Brother Irfan, for being here. I believe, alhamdulillah, the presentation, the entire day's workshop that you've put together, I think it's been very beneficial. I can see by the engagement that the parents are having that this is something very relevant, very important for the community. So we really do appreciate you taking the entire day out and preparing all this. And inshallah, this is going to, it's almost like a teaser. And I believe that the parents here will realize that we have so much to learn. In the light of Quran and Sunnah, we have so much to learn and improve in how we are parenting the children, the generation of today. And what we are, with a little bit of effort, that change that we are going to bring, inshallah, will last a long time. And our children will grow up to be strong, good, positive parents. And I hope that's, all the reward of what we're learning today goes to both of them as well. Barakallah fikum, jazakallah khairan kathira.